So I'm joined now by Lesley Manning, the director of Ghostwatch. I don't like describing it like this, Lesley. It's the fake documentary that shocked the nation, because when you watch it, it is quite clearly a drama. We see that, in the end there's closing credits. It's written by Stephen Vogt, directed by yourself. We have the cast list, but a lot of people, including my 9-year-old self, as I was just telling you before we started this interview, were caught up in the moment of Halloween 1992. But before we come specifically to that, and I know over those years you've probably talked about this quite a lot, but for Halloween night for you, how did you find? When did you wrap the filming and the production of Ghostwatch? I'm assuming that was done long before Halloween night.
Yes. So the shooting was sort of June, July. So we probably finished, August, September. I have a date somewhere, but yeah, it was a summer shoot, and then it came out of film department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's your memories of? Because there is things I want to come back to, but what are your memories of the actual shoot itself? I mean, that process and kind of the memories of filming. When you rewatch Ghostwatch, when you kind of see those closing credits, for us those are just credits, but for those are people that you worked with at the time. But what are your memories of the shoot itself?
It was fantastically technical and fantastically, it felt to me like the whole thing was, they had this great script, and it was, and I had to explode it out, examine every single technical part and bring it back seamlessly, because we were using, as I say, it came out of film department. So actually the executives expected me to just to shoot it on film, like a film, and probably a little bit further back, if you see what I mean, like watching it more as a drama. But we were really, really keen that I was really keen to sort of dive in it. So I said that we should do it in a studio on tape, like with the cameras. And then we got into quite a bit of mess with the OB units versus the studio boys, because they were two separate units. And there was demarcation in the BBC. So we were asked that we could only work with one. We could choose either studio or OB, but we were using both elements, because we had the outside broadcast OB outside the house, and studio, obviously, with Michael Parkinson in the studio. So we went with the studio boys. So that OB unit, that huge van outside, was a prop. They let us have it, and the poor studio boys technically had to rewire it up into a tiny little white van that they worked out of, because it wasn't their, the OB wasn't their thing. They flourished in studio, where it all, piped into desks.
It's a fantastic prop. When you look at it, you kind of got lucky. That there's no denying that it is a fantastic prop to have to really give that authenticity to what's going on.
Yeah, no, that we were grateful that the BBC let us have the prop. They just wouldn't function it. Yeah. So yeah, no, it was good.
Did you have anything when you were filming? Did you come to anything as a source material, as an inspiration? I think it's the Stone tapes. I think some people look at. We think, of course, there's after the broadcast. There's, of course, parallels are drawn with the War of the Worlds radio broadcast. Well, that's a slightly different, but and there's also clear influence from the Enfield poltergeist. You can see that in the DNA of the visual media, of visual side of stuff. But did you come in with anything that you drew from inspiration during that process?
We seriously looked quite carefully at television of the day, and also television, factual television, and it was in a really interesting state at the time. There was we talk about it quite a lot, but there was a program called 999, which was in fact just a sort of slightly gruesome real life disasters.
I remember it well, yeah.
Yeah, with always with a happy ending, fortunately. And they were going into full drama, and it always amazed me. You know, there was always blood and red and reenactment and lots of handheld camera and lots of POV, and it was fascinating. It was I suppose for them it might have been quite slightly new, but it was fascinating how dramatized that fact was. And also, interestingly, it was the Gulf War at the time, and I remember watching the news, and the tanks or something was going somewhere, and there was music under it, and it was the first time ever. And I thought, my God, this has got actually sort of subtext, emotional music under the news. I don't think they do it now, but it was a weird time of mashing up that sort of fact and fiction. So really, we studied television of the time, and then I did know it was, you know, I knew it was a horror. So for horror, I went to Nightmare on Elm Street. So I didn't take any. I sort of watching, you know, horror for horror, and then the language of TV. So I really, really didn't think. We did talk about War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Because of the conceit. But other than that, there was nothing else. We didn't go, oh, you know, a bit like this and a bit like that. Yeah.
What was that relationship like with you and Stephen? Because anytime I rewatch Ghostwatch, and I want to come back to that because I was rewatching it last night in prep for this interview on my lovely new 60-inch TV, and it still looks as fresh today. And the jump scares, if you want to call them that, or the kind of sly scares that are there in the background, you see as clear as day. But when I watch it now, I see that as a product of a director and a writer, a DOP, an editor, a cast and crew, everybody, just perfect synergy. And I know I'm sounding very much like a fanboy, and I'm trying my best not to, because Ghostwatch is something that had a profound effect on me. But it does seem like the product of a group of people in perfect synergy with each other. And that's just me looking from the outside in. I don't know, what was that process for you, being right in the center of that all?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely felt that. I mean, I love working with Stephen. We're still, we still got something that we want to make. I do feel, the best relationships with writers is hand in glove. You can almost finish each other's sentences, or you certainly know each other's psyche in that sense, or, their core spirit. And I do feel that I have that with Stephen. And I felt that the crew were sort of right behind it. It was technically, sorry to bang on about technically, but it was technically breaking a lot of new ground. So we had to, I did find that people were saying, we need another meeting. So so I'd be going, okay, so I'm going to do this and we're going to do that, and then that happens and this happens. They go, oh yeah, okay. And then like 3 days later they go, no, we definitely need another meeting. We've never done this before. Can we talk about the wall of video? Can we talk about this? Can we talk about... And the guys were, it's like the thing about BBC in those days, and I don't think they have it now, but they had boffins in cellars who were, who had multiple degrees from every university, and limps, and they absolutely, they absolutely thrived on this stuff.
Yeah.
Thrived on it. And they were offering me stuff up, like Top of the Pops was still going, and they just designed digitally the page peel, that thing that goes zzz, the digital page peel, and they were so proud of it. And so was I. And they said, do you want to use this? And I went, yes, of course I want to use that. So, prior to Top of the Pops, I managed to get a page peel in. And also the pixelation on the guy's face. So one of the routes I was really keen to take was, as I say, walk that thin line of fact and fiction. So the Vox Pop, immediately I said, I don't want actors, I want real people who've had real experiences. And Stephen and I were completely on that. So those weren't written as such, those were their own stories. And then one guy who, and actually that was incredibly humbling to interview those people, because they were all very affected by their own experiences, and really grateful that someone genuinely wanted to listen to them, I think. And one guy didn't want to be seen, so he wanted somehow his face to be obscured, and pixelation had just come out. So it was another technical thinker. Okay, he doesn't want to be seen, so he has these sort of rather big pixels on his face, which was new at the time.
You've probably kind of answered the question, but in typical me style, I'm going to go back and ask you something very similar. But you talked there about pushing new ground. Is there anything that at the time cast and crew, anything were skeptical on whether it would work, and then when you then look back and watch it, you kind of go, you can be smug, Lesley, but you can kind of go, I knew that would work, or that had the exact effect that we wanted it to have.
I think the only thing I will be smug about is that I did
be smug. Just yeah. I love the fact that you are just embracing it. Just go for it. Just be smug. That's okay. That's good. I'm loving this. It's good.
What I did manage to do was bring the whole team with me.
Yeah.
They like, if there was a problem, they would come up to me and say, look, I don't know how we're going to do this, but I want to do this and I can't do that, and we'd work it out. So I didn't have any of that thing where more than my job's worth, or who does she think she is? I didn't have any of that. I don't have any memory of that at all. That anybody was going, whoa, she's in deep water here, Mm-hmm. So I felt very, very. I did feel supported. I mean, I do. Always. I think sometimes, not always. Oftentimes, you're on set and people stand back and think, "Oh, is this going to work?" Mm. But nobody's ever stood in my way.
Was there anything? And I know I'm kind of going up. Was there anything you were worried? Because there's one sequence in particular. It's near the end, and I don't want to be too spoilerific for anybody who hasn't seen it, but there's a sequence near the end of Ghostwatch, and it involves the children and the crew in the bedroom, and then they're leaving the bedroom, and then the camera pans across, and just for a second we see pipes, and then it's gone. And I'm just kind of curious to see, like, stuff like that. Were you ever kind of worried, oh, is this going to work? And then that case of when you then see it, kind of when you're working in post, and you go, that it works exactly the way, because my wife, we were talking about this. My wife had never seen Ghostwatch. She's a few years younger than me, so she was 6, 7 around the time, and her mother was responsible. Her mother said, "No, you're not allowed to sit up and watch this." My parents, my mother worked at the Ulster American Folk Park. She was working on Halloween night. My father would have been at the house and just plonked me down. And it was always tradition at Halloween that I sat up to midnight till my mum came back. And my mum would have told me all about what was going on at the folk park, because they did sketches and they tried to basically, we have an expletive. They used to try this to scare the shite, is the only way I can put it, out of children, much like what Ghostwatch did. And I remember that night is ingrained on my head, because I just remember it so well. And that sequence in particular, even like I'm thinking now, like at the time, I don't know what my TV would have been like in '92, but I remember that. And you were kind of left going, I can see him. I can see that. And there's other stuff. And is there any of those, like in particular, when you were filming, you were worried, oh, it's kind of case you're like, when you were filming it, you're like, oh, I'm going to have to wait. Hopefully we're going to be able to get this to work. Was there anything like that?
I mean, that one in particular, I didn't have any doubts about. Yeah. And also, the power of the edit is fantastic, and I've always been a great advocate. If it's, if it doesn't work, cut it out. So you wouldn't have seen the bits that didn't work. There were bits that floored me, that I, in the sense that I had to work hard at, because they weren't having the right effect. But I don't know if that's quite answering your question. So
I get what you mean. Was there just in kind of what you're saying there? Was there anything that maybe you had planned, or anything that you kind of said, well, we'll do this, and then it just ultimately, when you watch it back, you just say, well, that just doesn't work. And as you say, just cut it or remove it. Was anything like that you just said, well, we're just going to have to remove this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Towards the end, we sort of cleaned up and went more streamline. At the chaos end, there was much more material. So we definitely shortened that. So some material hit the floor. And at the beginning, when you see the girls, to be honest, what I was fairly purist with the language. As you probably noticed, there were cameras in the house. There was the handheld camera. I never did the drama thing, pull outside. Maybe once in the studio, but I did set myself rules, and then I broke them. I think every filmmaker should break their own rules, or at least not be slave to your own rules at all, because you can really ruin a good piece if you stick too rigidly to your own rules. And this was a point of case when the girls were in the bedroom, and the opening sequence of the poltergeist with the two girls, and the light goes up. And in reality, in the fictional program that I was sort of trying to give birth to from the brain of another executive. Do you see what I mean? Because it's like it was posing as like a LE program on a Saturday night. So in reality, there would have been one fixed camera, and someone would have been back at somewhere watching it, or as the university back at one. But it didn't work as a fixed camera. So then I did Hunt. So that was fabricated afterwards, because that was a hell of a lot more scary than just a fixed camera. And Hunt didn't actually work. I mean, it wasn't. None of these fixed cameras could have done it. It was sort of technically not a physical possibility. So it's a massive cheat.
Yeah. Is there anything and it's only because I know the guys from Fright Club and I have done another panel where they've been talking to the producer and one of the actors and host that was recently been on Shudder, and that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to kind of reach out to yourself, because I think you look at hosts, and I see elements of Ghostwatch of a filmmaker and producers that have without a doubt been influenced. Clearly the people involved in that online seance, they never watched Ghostwatch. You don't know what you do in your broadcast. But is there anything now, when you look back on Ghostwatch, that, because we know you can go on YouTube and you can see where people have, screen grabbed and kind of marked that's going on. There's pipes, the cups is one that I never noticed until it was is there anything that you see that anyone I suppose it's been picked, it's nearly 30 years. Is there anything when you looked at you say that was so subtle that anybody hasn't picked up on yet, or anything you're surprised that nobody has picked up on when you watch back?
Oh, well, that's a difficult question, because I don't know all the lists of what everyone's picked up on.
Yeah.
So it's too difficult of one to, But I met the guys at Host, and I think they're brilliant. That was great.
Yeah, Host is a fantastic piece of film, and as I say, you can see the influence of a product like Ghostwatch, a film like Ghostwatch. So when you film and when you've finished, wrapped up on the film, what's that process like, or what was the kind of turn and fro, and was there kind of uncertainty about kind of the finished product between when you finished and wrapped to when it actually aired on Halloween night, about kind of that fear factor of what if people find themselves kind of getting too caught up in this, or that it's too real? Was those discussions between producers, the BBC, kind of compromises on things that, because we think of there's the phone number that comes up, there's an irony to that. There's a phone number that comes up and it's like, this is not real, this is a drama. And of course then those lines were jammed, that phone line went down. But just going back in between that process from finishing filming to the night it aired, was there to and fro and compromises between yourselves and the BBC about what could and couldn't go in?
Well, so, yes, just to start with the phone numbers, we took it very seriously, because we know people phone numbers. So we had two sets of lines. We had the BBC lines that are normally always manned, and then we had a whole bank with parapsychologists and people who could advise anybody if they did find that they were getting too spooked. And also the producer, Ruth Baumgarten, ran between the two. And the lovely story she tells is that as Ghostwatch was airing and things were going wrong, technicians in the lobby of BBC Centre were going, "Oh my God, what's happening in in Studio One?" Of course, it wasn't Studio One at all; it was Elstree, 3 months earlier. But so yes, there was a bit. There was sort of nothing, actually. I mean, there was surprisingly nothing between broadcast and it being finished. Richard Brooke, who's since passed away, sadly, was quite. He was quite responsible and kept saying, "I've got this program." I mean, this is how he told it to us. It's like he kept sort of flagging up at these weekly meetings. "Oh, I've got this program I've made, and it's a bit, you know." And because Richard had quite a good reputation, a good cachet of work behind him, people going, "Oh, Richard, stop talking about your programs. We know you're great," you know. So, he honestly said that nobody wanted to hear. So every time he was going, "Oh, I think I've got this program. It might need a bit of something, maybe even presentation. Might need to do something." So that's that. He was the exec, so that slipped through. We didn't do any previews, or we didn't send it out. We sent it out to one previewer, and I think it was Nancy Banks Smith or something, who didn't think much of it.
How wrong were they?
And then one thing Ruth wanted us to do was all have a party on the night, so we weren't on the street in case you know, it worked, that it was a live thing. So we all took our popcorn down to some place near the Thames, and a lot of the crew were there. But do you know, to be honest, I had no idea. I mean, the 2 days before transmission, I think the head of BBC, controller of BBC One, said, "You need to put credits. You need to put Stephen's credit at the front of the film, written by."
Yeah.
And in those days, it was G spools that were all prepared, and you just sort of plugged them in. And it was incredibly difficult to take that G spool out and just drop something in. We couldn't change any of the length because the night had been prepared. So we had to drop this. And so when you look at it, you can see it hasn't got much timing to it. Sort of goes written by Stephen Falk. Oh, and here's Michael, you know, Parkinson. So that was probably the major contribution from the controller.
Just, you know, on that note, you mentioned there about not sending many reviewers. Was that then again, I'm imagining, a conscious decision because you didn't want it, you didn't want to sell it as a live kind of event, but I suppose then the illusion's gone if too many people have seen something. If there's too many reviews of something out before it's actually aired, then the kind of the game is away. You know, you've given up that ghost, pardon the pun, that, you know, this Rouge is not really alive. Was that something that was conscious for yourselves?
Yes. Yeah.
So you mentioned then you had a party on Halloween night.
Yeah.
You know, this is pre-social media. This is kind of pre that digital era. What's kind of, at what point do you become aware on Halloween night 92 about just exactly the reaction that Ghostwatch was having, and the kind of, like, if I know it's an impossible thing, your thought process at that time, because I'm sure it's kind of like at one point you're like, yes, this is kind of like almost a nirvanic moment to have that kind of that effect on viewers, but also the kind of, I suppose, because I overthink everything. I'm a worrier, you know. At the same time, you're like, oh, it has had this effect. Like, what are your memories of Halloween night 92?
Do you know, like when you're directing and editing, and you've got this wonderful piece of work that you dive into, I honestly didn't have any focus on the outside world.
Yeah.
It was all about, you know, it's all about finishing it off. I mean, it's all about the detail at the end and making sure and trimming something and getting a little bit of reaction and someone saying, oh, that doesn't quite work. Oh my God, it doesn't quite, and that's it. All of my emphasis was in that presentation, in finishing that job. So honestly, when it's out, you think, oh, thank God, just thank God it's got up. And credit to anyone anywhere in the world who makes anything.
Yep.
Is sort of how you feel, and and so we had a great night on Halloween night, chatting away or whatever. Hadn't seen people for a couple of months, and then Ruth, the producer, came into the party after the transmission, a little bit sweaty, and said, everything's jammed. The whole world is jammed. Police stations in something are jammed. Everyone's worried about Sarah Green in the cupboard.
As they should have been, as they should. The lovely Sarah Green, yeah, as they definitely should have been.
Yeah. So we go, oh God, oh really? That was, for us, I was concerned, oh my God. And then I think Stephen and I talk about it. I think my memory of it was, oh, wouldn't it be great if they believe it for the first 5 minutes?
Yeah.
That was our thing. But then of course everyone will know it's a drama.
Yeah.
So we just thought we might get away with 5 to 10 minutes of it. And then I suppose the next hit was when Sarah Green phoned me up and she said, I'm coming round. And I went, what? She said, I'm being doorstepped. I went, oh my God. So she drove around to hide in my house. So I was hoovering madly, trying to tidy. But yeah. Yeah. So then, of course, the tabloids took it off, and then did their own thing, really.
Just kind of, I do want to come up, but just kind of before it, was there any, just when you talked there about, you hope that people would believe it for 5 minutes, was there anything at time when you look back at it, is there anything you said, right, there's going to come a point in this where people nobody's going to buy it, you're going to say, and somebody's going to say this has to be a drama? Was there anything a point, like, I mean, for me, when I was watching it last night, and I know one of the phone callers, you will know this, one of the phone callers, I think, is yourself, Lesley, I think, that phones in. And this might be the one, but there's the caller that phones in about the children won't go to bed and the blood coming down I think there's blood on the wallpaper or something like that. And you would say to yourself, well, surely, look, now, as a supposed adult, I'm nearly 40. I would say, if I was watching this, if this was to air, I would say, right, no, that's the point where I know this is a drama. This is not happening for real. It couldn't possibly happen. Was there anything in there when you look back at it, you say, it's only the way, as I say, my head works, that you say about wanting people to believe for 5 minutes. Was there any point you thought, right, they're going to believe it for this long, but there will come a point when they will go, right, no, this is a drama?
I honestly didn't think of it like that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a bit where I thought, oh, this is classic horror. I remember thinking that and thinking nobody's going to swallow it. But no,
you're great.
It
is regular viewers.
I just tried so hard.
Yeah.
I tried so hard to walk that line of, I know that there are massive horror fans, and I know there are, and I was trying to preach to the unconverted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get you. That's as someone who runs a horror festival, that's something that we try to do. We try to convert the unconverted. As I say, any regular viewers will know that scattergun approach is kind of how my brain works. And it was just picking up on something you said. You mentioned then the tabloids, then pick it up, and I think is one of the headlines. As I say, the documentary that hoaxed the nation, etc. Things like that. What at that time, I can imagine that's not. It probably, there's a sense of mixed emotions, being, yes, you're the center of attention, but you're also the center of attention. That makes, I mean, what was that like at that time for that documentary, and the reaction that it had to be just at the center of attention, and such a reaction? And in some cases, when you look back, like I remember, I think it was the Charlie Brooker when he kind of talked about it. I think it was on TV Wipe or Screen Wipe. He talked about it, and the reaction and hostility in some camps the broadcast had. What is that then? What's that like? What was that time period like for you?
We talked about, so I remember Stephen and I talked about, I mean, as a director, you're sort of fairly anonymous, to be honest. Most people were, to be fair, were on at Michael Parkinson. And then, I mean, I think they did call for me and Ruth Baumgarten to be disciplined in one tabloid, but fairly backseat. And also, you know, I'd finished the job at BBC, so Ruth and Richard took the brunt of all that, and also, to be perfectly frank, the BBC didn't want me anywhere near any, you know, that they said, oh no, you're not coming to Bite Back, so they didn't want me to say, oh yeah, we tried really hard to make it real. Yeah, we I suppose we wondered about what we'd actually done, because we didn't really realize how we'd had such a strong effect. And we sort of, the whole piece was supposed to be about, you know, the power of TV, and don't always believe what you see on TV. So there was, you know, there was a deep, obviously, like with Stephen, there was a deep sort of intellectual core to it. So, and we wondered why nobody, we were hoping for discussion, but not for a nation that looked like they'd just come out of a car crash. I mean, they were so vociferous about the people who did like it would, you know, stop me and tell me guiltily that they quite liked it. And if someone passed, they'd sort of pretend they hadn't said it. So I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it's nearly, what was I say, 92, so it's nearly 30 years, you know, and to my knowledge, I don't think it's been broadcast by the BBC since. Do you think that will ever become a thing? Like, do you think as we approach the 30th anniversary, do you think, you know, we've already had, I suppose, the 25th, the 20th, the 10-year anniversary, those have all passed, but do you ever get a sense that it's something like that will end up on being broadcast on the BBC beyond, as I mentioned earlier on, you know, little snippets in the likes of the Charlie Brooker episode?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I imagine one day, but I don't know. They shut it down for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you look at it now, I mean, you know, there is things at the time, you know, I think it's documented as being one of the first TV episode or TVs to be attributed to post-traumatic stress and things like that. And there's no denying that those things are there. But when you look back at it now, and we mentioned host earlier on, you know, where do you, when you watch stuff now, do you see that I could have influenced that, or our work at Ghostwatch could have influenced that process, or over those years since we mentioned hosts, you mentioned you spoke to the filmmakers involved, you know, do they attribute it as an influence for them, or is any filmmaker or anything like that has approached you and kind of said that my love, well, I'm speaking to you now, my love of horror, I've really thought about this, and it comes back to Ghostwatch, and it's that sense of being absolutely petrified, but wanting to go on and watch it, see it through to the end. And in again a sense, without being OTT, I've been searching for that same kind of feeling. You know, films have come and gone that have scared me, but that memory, it's like when you go to a concert and it's the perfect concert. And you want to replicate that when you go see that band again. But that for me, when I watch back, like I've talked about it on our podcast, the night that happened when we were watching Ghostwatch, I had because we're Ireland, it was a turn-up. We had a jack-o'-lantern on top of the TV. And it wasn't during Ghostwatch, but it might have been maybe an hour or so afterwards it had finished airing. We must have made the lantern wrong, and the mouth was too low, so the wax started to kind of come down the TV screen. And, you know, having watched Ghostwatch, that sent me to a point of just, you know, I was petrified, and it's like, oh my God. And like, I remember my father saying, hey, come on, you know, you're 9 years old, it's not real. You know, how often have you seen your mother at, you know, at the folk park doing things? And I just remember, and that is a main reason why I look back so fondly on Ghostwatch, and it's that memory. It's a weird thing, you know. Maybe I'm a weirdo, but that memory of being terrified and those moments being ingrained on onto my retina is the best way of putting it. But from you, you know, over those years, have you seen things that you said undoubtedly Ghostwatch has had an influence?
Yeah, well, I mean, I met Jed, writer of, and Gemma, I think, writer of host, quite recently, and they were very, very sweet, and said this point, and this point directly from Ghostwatch. And I went, oh, great. Well, I'm really proud of that, and it's really cool that they say that, you know, that influenced that influenced that, and that's taken straight from Ghostwatch. That's great. But sometimes I do watch stuff and the hairs on the back of my neck go, I'm sure that's, you know, there's just a sort of slight DNA crossover, and you think, I'm sure that was influenced by Ghostwatch, you know, when it's just some, I don't know, sometimes when they do something.
I'm not sure about this, but with the American audiences, I mean, I don't know how mass the kind of, I know now we have BBC America and things. I don't know what that was like at the time, but just because I think was it 2017 Ghostwatch went up on Shudder in the
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So I'm just, did that open that film to a new audience that maybe hadn't previously been seen? And did you get feedback from it then?
Yes, we did. Yeah, there was a flurry of activity. I don't know if it was 17 or slightly later, because it felt like just last year or the year before. But it went up for a year on Shudder, and we did, Stephen and I did sort of a little flurry of podcasts, and people were pointing it out and saying, you know, definitely watch this. So they definitely opened it up. Then it, you know, it was only a year, so yeah.
I am going to have to bring the interview to a close because, unfortunately, as much as I would love to kind of go through minute by minute and talk through, you know, a lot of Ghostwatch and probably talk what is a very expensive on my side therapy session, but let's not go there. Let's not open those wounds. There was one thing I did want to ask you, and I'm going to try and word it the best way I can. One of the big things within this year's festival, within the Dark Hedges International Film Festival, is Women Make Horror. And I just wanted to ask you, kind of looking back, I mean, you mentioned earlier on that there wasn't any problems on set, but I'll word this as best I can. Do you think the fact that Ghostwatch was helmed by a female director, do you think that in any way kind of skewed? It's probably a silly question to ask. Do you think it skewed kind of the reaction to in the way the tabloids reacted to it on, and kind of the legacy of it, or kind of like for yourself, your attitudes to kind of how women making horror have changed even from 92?
Oh my God, that's such a huge subject that you open up in the last. First of all, I'm not sure the tabloids gave a shit, really. I mean, I think they were just reacting. Uh, uh, I definitely think if I hadn't, I definitely think there's a problem for women and subject matter.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky I have been lucky to be given non-feminine stuff to direct, because I mean, I'd worked with Ruth Baumgarten the year before on a film called My Sister Wife, which is completely different, but we got on well. She obviously trusted what I could do, so that's why I got offered that job. I think it's really difficult for women. I mean, even then people say, and also people, you go into a meeting and I dress normally. I don't dress like a horror, you know. People go, oh, well, you do horror, you know, you've done horror. It's like,
Lesley, some of the nicest people I've never met over the years have directed horror or worked in the horror genre.
yeah.
So, you know, it is a strange preconception. And when you tell people that you love horror or horror is your favorite genre, you go, but you're normal. I mean, you don't seem like I mean, I've been told you don't seem like the person who loves horror, and it's like, no, yeah, I am. I'll happily kind of lap it up. I would agree with you in that sense, and I'm a man, you know. I don't know. I mean, I remember vividly meeting one of our first female contributors, and we had we have a TV show here in Belfast, and we were talking, and we had a guest on, our very own Therese Ray, and there was a girl, Colette Fahy, kind of said, well, do you know what I'm tired of? I'm tired of seeing 30-year-old men talking together about how much they love horror, because I love all those things too. And it's like, well, I feel a bit bad because I'm 30-something-year-old. I love John Carpenter, but I've never felt of it that way, as being something that was exclusive to men or a men's club. And just with what you were saying there, because I was interviewing someone for the London Film Festival a couple of days ago, and she was kind of talking to me about how, there's a film she's made and that it's deemed a horror, but she doesn't really deem. She says, look, it's been put and dubbed as a horror because over years that's been classed. That's what horror would be, but she doesn't necessarily classify it as that. She's it's me working as a woman in the genre, in the industry, and it's my take on the horror genre. But I don't think, and it's just kind of interesting what you say, like do you think from those times, there's no denying that attitudes have changed, but looking back, what was that like for you in the 90s and kind of post?
Well, I mean, being a woman director in those days was fairly rare, for sure. And you did feel, I mean, I'm talking now practically, I mean, you did feel you were always being tested, but the test was very short on, in terms of on the set. For me, it was very short. It was always like half a day where everyone would go, okay, what's going to happen here with her, especially if you're a young woman. But like half, if you do good work and you do it on schedule and you don't, you're focused, then everyone loves to come along with you. So that's that. Well, that's not a problem. I think for me, it's much more of a problem with the producer, exec, all that level. I think is actually the difficult area, because even now, women have to have subjects that are about. There's still that thing about, well, what's your connection to it? Well, why can't women actually direct? Men sci-fi or whatever. There's definitely, Stephen and I are doing a sci-fi. It's a male lead. 2 male lead. It's very difficult for people to see the narrative, because it feels like I have to be part of that story, and I don't actually understand that.
It's interesting, like you must look at it now and see how far, to a certain extent, that it has come. Things have undeniably changed, and hopefully they will continue to change for the better. We are starting to see much more now. I know here in Ireland we have our very own Aisling Clarke, who did The Devil's Doorway, who I know is a massive fan of Ghostwatch, because when I told her I was speaking to yourself, she got very excited. And so there's no denying that. And just, I know I said my last question, but this is my very, very last question. I do lie on that front, but I know, and I feel quite flippant moving from that kind of talking about what we've just been talking about there to this. But I know that you and Stephen, you're doing on Halloween night the live seance, kind of a long kind of, is it kind of watch a lot or not, kind of an event? Do you want to just very quickly talk us through kind of what's going to be going on there, because I think this has been going now for a few years now?
Yeah, so it's Rich Lorden's thing. So Rich Lorden, who did the documentary, and he's very involved with the national seance that starts at 9:25, I think, and most of the hardened Ghostwatch fans tune in. And this year, Stephen and I will be with Rich in a Zoom and be fielding and answering his tweets, and I think it's going through YouTube.
Fantastic. We shall look forward to watching that, Lesley, and hopefully Pipes shall not make an appearance on that, but who knows in this strange world that we find ourselves in. Lesley Manning, it has been an absolute pleasure. There's loads I could talk to, and possibly at another time I will be able to bombard you with a lot of different questions, but thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.